I think we can all agree that continuous deployment methodologies are a great way to increase productivity for developers in any technology out there. In Azure, anyone starting with Azure can get quickly overwhelmed by the amount of choices you have. Today I'm going to show you the simplest way you can create a continuous deployment for your web applications and serverless function apps. So stay tuned. Deployment Center is part of Azure App Service. It's a centralized overview for all the supported methods for continuous deployment on Azure App Service. What does it deliver? First of all is this guided experience. There's a wizard that will guide you through setting up the process for all those possible combinations of deployment options. Second of all, it's app service based. That means it works both for the web apps and function apps if you're building serverless. It allows building for both Linux and Windows applications and supports a lot of external systems like External Git repository. This can be any external Git repository, either public or private, in which case you need to provide credentials. You can use also GitHub, Bitbucket, or Azure DevOps. There's quite few other options, but there are not some common, but those are the most common ones that you should be using. And lastly, there's something called Kudu build service. Kudu is a set of tools for development and diagnostics on your applications, but it also has a nice feature of build service, which allows you to build your code locally on the app service itself. You can find Deployment Center within the deployment section of your app service. The same goes for the function apps. So how does it work? There are a couple of scenarios I'm gonna show you here. This one is the first one with external Git. Since we're using Kudu build service needs the code to have it locally. You need to sync the code from external Git repository into local repository on a Kudu itself, so that Kudu build service can build the code locally and deploy it to your app service. Everything happens locally, so there's no traffic other than the syncing process. Second of all, you can integrate with GitHub. That's gonna be our second demo. And the reason for doing that is if you're gonna integrate with GitHub, you're gonna log into GitHub repository using your credentials. There's no longer gonna be that sync process that I was talking about, which will allow you to take your changes faster without this manual syncing process. And the last option that I see people using from the deployment center is through DevOps. So you have DevOps, you have repository on the DevOps, and if you're using DevOps for the building process as well, there's no longer need for that local source to be synced, and you can omit this step. All of these processes can be set up through the deployment center, and we'll be talking about this today. So if you're using Kudu for building process, there are a set of requirements that you need to follow. The most important ones are the root directory files, depending on your runtime. If you're using .NET Core, that needs to be either solution or project file. If you're using Node, that needs to be server.js or app.js and package.json file. There needs to be different type of file for HTML projects, etc., etc. For functions, it of course depends on the function runtime language. So you need to be aware of that if you're planning to use Kudu for your building process. So the first scenario that we're gonna be talking about today is the external Git. It's the first scenario that I will be showing as a demo. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the portal to present this scenario. So let's go to the portal to present the first demo. In the portal, I will create app service for our purpose. It's gonna be the web app. I need to select the resource group where I'm deploying my application. I need to provide the demo name, so that's gonna be amdemo1. That's gonna be the name of our application. The runtime stack will be .NET Core. Windows operating system is fine. And I'm gonna choose North Europe for our region. I'm gonna pick the name for the app service plan. Hit OK. And I'm gonna leave everything else as default. So I'm gonna review and create, and hit create. The deployment finished, so we can go now to our resource, and in the app service, you will find the URL base for application. I'm gonna open it. So we see that there's nothing here right now. So let's go to the deployment center, And this is the experience that you will see when starting to set up anything in the deployment center. So of course, you always need to start with the source control. Since our first demo will be based on an external Git, so let's go for that, but we need to set up a Git repository first. So in the second tab, I have my Git opened, and I'll hit new to create new repository. It's gonna be amdemo1. It's gonna be a public repository. I'm not gonna initialize it, so I'm just gonna hit create. And this is the code to initialize this locally. So to initialize this, I will go to the Visual Studio Code to create the demo application. This is my demo folder that is currently empty. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna initialize new MVC application using .NET Core. And to do that, I'm gonna type .NET new MVC. Right now we have the new MVC application. Now that the application is created, we can initialize Git repository with git init command. Once we do that, we notice that all the folders are part of the repository, but we don't want the object and bin folders as part of the repository because it's a very bad practice to have your build artifacts as part of the repository. So let's fix that really quick. New file, .gitignore. And I'm just gonna copy paste the standard gitignore file for the projects. The most important lines from these files are of course those build results. So right now you see those are grayed out. So once we have the git initialize and we have git ignore ready, let's commit our initial build. This will be our initial commit, and we are ready to commit this repository into the GitHub. So let's use this since this is pushing the existing repository. So let's copy paste. Let's paste them in. And looks like we're done. Right now we pushed our code, so we can refresh this page and see our code repository ready. So if we go back to the deployment center, we can hit on external Git, hit continue. We can select, as we were saying, Kudu build service or Azure pipelines. This is still in preview, so be careful about this one. So I'm selecting Kudu build service, and I need to provide the build URL for our repository. So I need the code repository, and this is the URL that you can grab using this button here. Paste it here. The branch name is master. What's type the repository? That can be the Mercurial or Git. Is it private repository? No, we currently set up a public repository. So hit next, and that's it. Let's hit finish and see the results. It will take about 2 or 5 minutes to build everything, so I'm gonna speed this up. In this case, it took less than 2 minutes to build the application. So if this worked, we can click on this browse button to see the application running. It will take for the first time to spin it up a couple of seconds, but we should see our application running. That was super easy. So let's make a quick change to this welcome message for our application. Let's open the files, go to views, home, index, and welcome from DevOps. Well, this is not DevOps, but we can change that message. We can make a new commit, new message, hit enter. And now that we committed our change, don't forget to push the change to the Git. You can of course either use the command terminal or you can use the source control from Visual Studio Code to do all the same stuff that I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna go back and notice something interesting. Here you don't see new build. We currently are still on the initial version. And to sync this up, you actually need to hit the sync button here. When you do, you will notice that right now we found there's a new commit coming in, and it's called new message, and it's running the deployment. So let's wait for that. And we're done. The second build was much faster. We can actually refresh our page and see the new message on the screen. Welcome from DevOps. So, as you can imagine, clicking sync every time is not ideal, but this is the way when you're working with public repository that you don't have access to. Before I show you how to do this all better using GitHub, I just want to show you the logs here. On the right hand side you can always find the logs for the build and review all the steps that was done by Azure in order to build this. So whenever you're having any issues, always go to this tab and shows the logs. So you will see what did Azure run in the background to build your application. And the second thing that I want to show you is when you go to Kudu, you actually can find Kudu here on the left hand side called Advanced Tools. This is the Kudu. You can hit Go to open a Kudu service. I'm gonna zoom this out in a little bit. Go to the PowerShell. This allows me to review the folder structure of our site. And you can go to Site. You will find the repository folder here. And this is entire structure of our application code. And you can actually run the git command here. So let me actually paste this in here, git remote show origin. And you will see we are currently running on a GitHub marchak.io amdemo1 git. So it's also a good way to review what is currently being pulled other than through the portal itself. So let's go to the second example, how to do it nicer, how to get this pushing instead of syncing in our application. So let's go to the presentation, and in the presentation, let's quickly review what we just did before we go to the next example. So for the external Git, we were doing the sync process. That means in our app service, in a site folder, there's always repository folder with your code. That's gonna be your path that you need to go to run git remote and show the origin for your application. And the second scenario that we're gonna be doing is using GitHub. Thanks to using GitHub, you will actually get a webhook which will automatically push information to Azure that there's a new code. You can find those webhooks on the projects in a GitHub if you want to review which applications are being hooked to your code from the GitHub level. So let's go to the portal, and our second demo will be using Azure Functions. So I'm gonna close all the other tabs, and I'm gonna first create new repository for the functions. It's gonna be our repository. In this case, it's gonna be private, and it's gonna be empty. So it's gonna be amdemo2, create repository. So we have now empty repository where we'll be pushing our functions. So what we need right now is in Azure, we need to create function app. So let's go here and create new function app. We actually have quick start here. So let's do that. Let's use it. amdemo2. We need to select resource group. Okay. Something was a little bit slow in here, but it works. So for Windows, we choose hosting plan, consumption plan. Again, we're choosing North Europe. I'm gonna choose .NET Core as a runtime stack and leave everything else as default. So I'm gonna hit create. I don't need this to be deployed in order to perform next steps. So I'm gonna go to my folder where I'm having my demo. I will actually reuse this and I will delete all of that code. But also remember there's still a git locally running, so you need to delete it. You will notice that removing git will actually show you that there are no changes. So now we are able to reuse the folder for the new project. So if you don't know how to do it, check my video on the function apps. Other than this, press F1, create Azure function. Do you want to create new project? Yes, I do. This is gonna be a .NET Core using C#, so I'm gonna use this language. And the first demo will be using HTTP trigger. So I'm gonna hit HTTP trigger, leave the default namespace, and function access rights. This will initialize the standard project for Azure Functions. Let's restore the packages. What is interesting for the functions, you always get git ignore by default. So you see those local files and bin folders are already omitted by default, which is amazing. That means the only thing we need to do is we just need to push this code. So let's go to our am-demo2 and let's hit those two commands here, remote origin add and push. But before that, let's not forget to commit our changes. I'm gonna hit push and in terminal copy paste our commands and push our changes to our repository. Once this is done, we can go always and quickly review that our changes are here. As I said, for the Kudu service, you need to have the CS_proj file in the root folder. So now we can actually go to the portal. Let's review. Our deployment was successful, so we can go to the resource. This is our function app. Since the function apps are based on the app services, you can quickly go to the platform features and go either to deployment center or hit this button to see the same stuff that you would see for the normal service. But since this is here, I'm just gonna hit it. And what we're doing right now is a GitHub integration. Notice that it already says smart-track.io because I did log in to GitHub previously, so it remembers my credentials. If not, just simply log into your GitHub to get access to your private repositories. So I'm gonna hit GitHub. Notice something interesting. When I'm changing those options from the external Git, I'm getting more or less options on the top. That means with a GitHub, I'm also able to choose build provider. So let's continue. I'm gonna be also using app service for my building, which is Kudu. I need to choose the organization, that is my organization on the GitHub. I need to choose the application, this will be am-demo2 repository. And I'm gonna choose master branch. Hit continue. This continue buttons, this is not the first time it actually does a trick on me. Sometimes it just doesn't work. The simplest way to do it is simply Ctrl F5 or Ctrl R to refresh the cookies of the web page. I don't know what is happening, but you very quickly can fix it, but just by doing entire process again. So hit continue, Kudu, smart-track.io, repository am-demo2, master branch, hit continue, and as you see, this time it works. Finish, and simply wait. Almost exactly after 3 minutes, we're done. Our application was running, so let's confirm this is simply running. So let's refresh functions to get the list of our new functions. We have our HTTP trigger function. Let's open it to get the function URL, or we can actually use the test tab on the right hand side. Let's add parameter name, Adam. This is the standard out of the box function, so it should reply with hello Adam. So it works. What's great here is that this is powerful if you think about it, because right now let me show you something. Let's go to deployment center. This looks weird. Let's refresh that. As you see, this is not perfect. It has a lot of tiny bugs here and there. So just simply refresh the page and it should be fine. So let's go back and make a small change. Right now we have hello. Let's change it to hi. A silly change, but it will show me and show you how powerful this feature now is. So let's save this. Let's make a new commit. Hi message. And push it. The command was pushed successfully, so if we go back into the portal, within a couple of seconds we'll notice that the code will automatically be pulled from GitHub, and right now we are pending because we got a webhook message that the new commit came through. Status running deployment for hi message comment. It just took like 3-4 seconds to notice that there's a new commit and we need to rebuild the code. This is powerful from the productivity standpoint, because you just need to set this up and you very, very quickly can develop and push changes into your development or test environment. So just to go to finish this demo, I will go to our repository, and within repository settings, you can find webhooks to see our AM demo 2, SCM. SCM is shorthand for the Kudu service, Azure website /deploy to notify our service that the new commits came through. And that was our GitHub demo. I'm not gonna show you the demo for DevOps, and there's a reason for that. I wouldn't use DevOps from the perspective of continuous deployment and deployment center, because it has out-of-the-box templates that it uses, and some of those templates tend to be outdated. For instance, the demo that we just did today is using .NET Core, and from the deployment center, if you're gonna set a build on Azure DevOps, it will use .NET framework, the full one, so it will fail during deployment. My honest opinion is that if you want something more complex, something more complicated, or simply want to use Azure DevOps, learn Azure DevOps and do entire build on Azure DevOps itself rather than this. This is amazing for the small projects, for small POCs, quick tuning, quick testing, but nothing more complicated than this. But before we close, let's simply go quickly to the portal and go to our C# trigger function and confirm our change was deployed successfully. So let's refresh trigger function, go to the test tab and run it with Adam2 and hit run. Hi Adam. So that's it. This is how simple it was for me to implement a change and push it into the service in Azure without any tools, any requirements, any external platforms, any technical knowledge to be honest at all, and that was this simple. So the deployment center is quick and easy way for you to set up continuous deployment in Azure for web application and serverless function apps. If you need anything more complicated, consider using DevOps. If that fits your fancy, start using it now. So if you like this video, hit thumbs up, leave a comment. If you want to see more videos, subscribe, and see you next time.